way back in the 1960s. I think from 1967 through 1971, thereabouts, I subscribed to a magazine called the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. It's monthly. Every once in a while, F&SF, as we all used to call it, would have a special author issue where they would spotlight a single writer. In July of 1969, I was 16. The July issue came, and it was a special Fritz Leiber issue. I had already purchased his Arkham House edition, Knights Black Agents. He was already high up on my list of favorite horror and science fiction writers, and so I was very pleased to get that issue. Anyway, in that issue, there were some poems he wrote, part of a canon of poems called The Demons of the Upper Air. And there was also information on how to order a special limited edition chapbook of those poems by a publisher, small press, limited edition publisher called Roy Squires out in New Jersey. So I ordered it, and here it is. It's had some air pollution. $271, I think, out of, well, we'll see how much it was out of. I think it was $350. This little bit was tipped in, glued on. $275, so this came very close to being the last one, signed by Fritz. Wonderful, wonderful poems. In the universe, sort of H.P. Lovecraft, because Fritz Leiber was an early acolyte and correspondent with Lovecraft. Moving on to the summer of 1993. I had been published, I had had illustrations published in this magazine, Weird Tales, edited by George Sithers and Daryl Schweitzer. George had moved his operation to his home in West Philadelphia. I was living in Philadelphia, so I was able to get some work. And at one point, the conversation got around to Fritz's work and their attempt to get some new work from him. And I said, well, how about Demons of the Upper Air? Have you guys ever considered reprinting that? They hadn't. So I convinced them they should, and I also convinced them that I should illustrate it. So I got the gig. And here they are. The first one illustrated poem number 1. There is a whispering outside the walls, a thing on the roof. And the second illustration was for number 6. Ho, tramper on the road below, I spy the way that you must go. Love the way that one ends. And do not dawdle by the way. Remember, I'm not in your pay. So with all of that behind me, in the back of my mind, in 2006, I decided to create White Noise Press. The plan was to invite a small number of writers who I greatly admired and ask them each to contribute a new story, original fiction, paying them a bit above market. Didn't want to insult them. And we would package their story in an edition of 150 numbered copies in printed envelopes, signed by them and by me, and see if any of them would sell. So, like I said, in 2006, I started with a story I greatly admired by my friend Jason Van Halder called The Hell Book, which had already been published in Weird Tales. And we only did 100 of this one because I just wasn't sure what was how things would go. It sold out quickly. Then the second one was a story by James Newman and Jason Brannon called The Church of Dead Languages. You can see that I added these special end papers, some interior art, and it was done in 2 colors. I really knew I was onto something with this one. I had asked Jeff Strand, who I had illustrated a few times already, if he was interested, and he said, yeah, I can send you a story. He said, hell, I can send you 2 for the price of 1. I said, wow, what a deal, I'll take you up on that. So we decided to make it sort of like those Ace doubles, where there would be a story on this side and also a story on that side. Again, we've got the color end papers, 2 color. These were stories that Jeff didn't think anybody else would publish because of the content. Didn't bother me a bit. It's werewolf porno, funny stories of scary sex. The numbers were here, and the signatures were on this page. And at the end of this book, we decided on the Flip Me baby, the Flip Me girl. The other story, Sex Potion number 147. Again, 2 color. Signed again. It's the same number though. That was a lot of fun. That one sold out in about half a day. I remember thinking, I'll put it up, I'll see how many hits I get, and going towards noon, I saw, oh, I'm getting towards the end, I better stay here. And it's a good thing I did, because boom, 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 we hit 149, 150, no, actually it was like 145, and I stopped it. That's why this one's 147. And then the remaining 48, 49, and 50 were there in case there were problems with delivery. Sometimes these things got lost in the mail or got mangled in the mail, and I had to replace them. I couldn't go back into production and print new ones, so I always wanted to have a few extra. Gary Brownback's Smiling Faces. Sometimes I was experimenting with layout. With these, I started anyway, with layout. We're now in 2007. Wonderful story from Gary. Again, the translucent end papers, original illustration. And this one, you don't see any number or any signatures. I decided to move that. But I also started to do these kinds of illustrations in the book. I mean, This made this one a little bit thicker because I added an extra folio. We ended up putting the numbers and the signatures on the back. Again, as I was getting really, really close to the end, I just stopped. I said, I'm not going to sell anymore. So I retained number 149. With Brazen Bull by Elizabeth Massey, we did something a little different. I don't know if you can see over here. Beth and I decided to do a limited edition print, signed and numbered print, an illustration from the chapbook. We decided to do an edition, I believe, of 30. And the way the chapbook was advertised was first 30 orders will get one of those. And her story was Brazen Bull. Again, I'm changing design. Now I'm doing this sort of a block print kind of a look. Wrap around, you can see. I really enjoyed this one. Again, here we go. We've got sort of an echo of the cover. Different kind of paper. Nothing here again. Two color. You get to the back. This is number 37. For some reason I kept 37 and sold the rest. Still in 2007. This one sold out in a day. I had one for Keel and Patrick Burke. A very long story, but my saddle staple machine worked. Seldom seen in August. We're in 2008 now. These illustrations make sense in the story. You see this, you can see the one, but you can't really see the other ones. Now you see two, but you can't really see the other ones. I was trying design ideas, layout, graphic design. I had the freedom to do whatever the hell I wanted. So I had fun. We got all the way to 9, at the end of the story. This is number 76. I don't know why I kept 76, but there it is. And you can see in this one, the little doll is now on the screen. It finally all came crashing down after a few more. With this one, the Brian Keene one. I had no idea that Brian Keene had an army of people, every single one of which thought that they deserved to have a copy of everything he wrote. I had only 150 of these to sell. And I did it exactly like the rest. I didn't make any changes in how I sold it. I advertised it, put it up on my website. Very clearly said first come, first served. And I sat there in front of my computer, and I swear to God, in about 20 minutes, less than half an hour, sold out. Just gone. So I immediately went to my website and shut it down. It said, sorry, we're all sold out. What happened next was not pleasant. I think I made a lot of enemies from followers of Brian. But I only had 150 of these to sell, and I sold them. For this one, I changed the binding from my saddle stapler to this, where I hand stitched it. 2008. I lasted 2 years doing this. It's all about these little dead animals that this leprechaun leaves on the porch. So there you can see a little rodent. And then I just did little pictures of rodents throughout it. Halves. Again, like that. I did this on very thick stock because I didn't have to worry about the saddle stapler banging through all of it. I could make it as hefty as I wanted because I was just using an awl, an AWL awl, to punch the holes. Got to the center. You can see where there's where the 3 holes were. This is my daughter. I used her as a model for that. Get to the end. Brian wrote a postscript. So after all of that shit hit the fan on this one, I said, you know what? Hell with it, I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore. It's not worth it. So I shut down White Noise Press. Until 2014. I was at Nikon, Northeast Writers Conference, and let's see, who else was there? Norman Prentice was there. Mary Sangiovanni was there. The great James Moore and Charles Rutledge were there. Jeff Strand was there. Who else? All of these people were there. And I had a group of friends who kept bugging me, why don't you start up White Noise Press again? Why don't you start up White Noise Press again? And I kept saying, because, and I gave all the reasons. And Saturday night, I don't know if they still do it, but back then, in 2014, every Saturday night there was this meeting at the in the quad where they fried up some hot dogs. They called them soggies, and there's a lot of beer and just people hanging out, talking, playing guitar, having a good time. And I just finally, I walked over to Norman. I said, Norman, I'm thinking of starting at White Noise Press again. Would you like to contribute a story? And he said, absolutely, I would love to. I would love to. What a great idea. And I went over to Jeff Strand, and I said, hey Jeff, guess what? He said, you're starting White Noise Press again, aren't you? And I said, yeah. He said, I wrote a story about bratwurst. I said, can I please have that? He said, absolutely, you can have it. Cool thing about this one was, getting ahead of myself, we added these, which are real, to every copy. More exotic papers. Having a little fun. At this point in 2014, my original 4-color inkjet printer had bit the dust, and I was using another one that could no longer handle printing on envelopes. So I started to tip in to glue these little illustrations in, just like the Roy Squires Demons of the Upper Air. Getting ahead of ourselves, the first one I had done was a thing with feathers by Norman Prentice, wonderful story. I was using very expensive cover stock. This is called a deckled edge. Can you see? It's the edge of handmade paper. There's Norman. Once more, I put these out, and they all would sell within a day. I had a definite list of White Noise Press chapbook customers who were collecting these, and I tried to honor their interest and their support by making these available to them first. I didn't want to have another one of these debacles. So Norman, Jeff Strand, What Rough Beast by James Moore and Charles Rutledge, from the Wild West. So we decided to make it look like a Penny Dreadful from the actual Wild West. Again, a deckled edge to the cover. Number I started keeping number 13 for myself. 2 colors. Wow, I forgot about that one. Yeah. Spent some time with the illustrations. I wanted to make them hopefully as as good as the stories. That was a lot of fun. Here we come to, this is probably my most successful chap in that this is the best story I ever had the honor to purchase and publish. No Songs for the Stars by Mary Sangiovanni. When I got this one, it just blew me away, absolutely blew me away. In 2014. Again, handmade Japanese papers. Illustration by me. Signed. This is number 2. Why I kept number 2, I don't know, but maybe I know Mary got number 1. All the writers got the number 1s. This was my, to me, a crowning achievement for me, only because the story was just so great. Would scare the hell out of you. Okay, we're no longer in stories that I requested at Nikon. I decided to go across the pond, and I contacted Alison Littlewood, a British writer who I greatly admire, collect all her books, and she agreed to send me a Victorian ghost story, The Winter Tree. Handmade papers again, signed. I was again keeping my number 13 for myself. Beautiful story. Gary McMahon. There's a bluebird in my heart. Very dark story, very dark. Paper stock. Full 4 color this time. I was starting to lose my my eyesight in in 2015, so my illustrations started to get a little more sketchy. Again, I kept number 2. Gene O'Neill, the Algernon effect. In this case, I put this on this and on that. Chipped in, glued on. More exotic Japanese end papers. Contacted John Little, and he sent me a story. This is number 3. He sent me a story that involved Schrodinger's, not Schrodinger's cat, but Schrodinger's clock. And I just started to grab these physics equations from the internet. And I remember running a galley by John, and he pointed out something. He said, well, that one's wrong. He said, you got to take that one out. He understood all of these. So I swapped in another one. I said, how about that one? He said, okay, yep, that one's real. It's real gold. I'm like, it's worth anything. But again, I was really unable to draw up to snuff by now, and so I just started to do little graphic images for the interiors. Copy number 13. Last one I did before I decided to hang up my spurs for the final time was a story by Matt Warner. And I commissioned his wife, Dina Warner, to do the cover. So we decided to go whole hog and have it professionally printed. 2017. Meat Cow Maker. Science fiction. What the heck? Number 2, signed by Matt and by Dina, because I basically had nothing to do with this other than a little bit of graphic design. But no real illustrations. It was all Dina's cover and Matt's words. And that's where it ended in 2017, since I wasn't really able to do professional illustration anymore at this point. I didn't see the point of continuing with the White Noise Press. So again, I very quietly shut it down.